Hello, all of my Fool's Gold Confessions from an Educated Fool subscribers. This is Donald Earl Collins here again. Yay! Hi. I'm actually at the end of grading for my last semester teaching at Loyola University of Maryland. So I feel refreshed. I actually don't feel really. I just feel more tired than anything. Tired of bullshit. Tired. Tired of bullshit that really has nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm professoring, which is teaching and hopefully helping students learn, helping them grow as people, that sort of thing. And the Loyola University experience, University of Maryland experience, let me be clear, this is not Loyola University Chicago or Loyola Marymount University in the LA area. This is Baltimore Loyola. Anyway, a couple of things I just want to say, clear up on the second half of what I think is going to be three essays on, feeling like a fool and dying departments, right? And one of these things is where I say in my conversation with my partner, where I say my students are brain dead. I know for some of you that's eugenicist, maybe ableist, maybe both in terms of language. Well, we all make mistakes. I'm sorry I said it in the sense that I don't want to insult any groups or any group of people, including my students. And there's some of you who are on the theoretical side of what it's like to be a professor. You should never insult your students. You should never demean them. You should never say anything bad about them, whether publicly or privately. No, that's not how people work, and that's not how humanity works, right? So, in the sense that I don't want to offend people, and I want people to feel like I think certain groups don't deserve equal treatment, which is completely false. I don't. Um, you know, I apologize. I am sorry if you think that that's what I mean there. But what I really mean when I say brain dead is they're not. They're literally are conditioned to not learn anything. They see college really as an extension of high school, in part because they are treated in such a way by the university, the students I've had at Loyola, to think about their school as just basically a 4-year long semi-independence movement toward adulthood in which they get to do sports camps and they get to do intramural and they get to do all kinds of other sports clubs and all this other stuff that really is fine in terms of the totality of the college experience, but not fine if you're worried about the academic side of the college experience too. I'll talk more about what they do with sports clubs there, which I've really never. I've seen it in other cases and in other places, but not quite like this, right? Not at this level at any university I've taught at any university I've heard of, at least in recent memory, which brings out the historian in me. But anyway, my main point is that the students come into these classrooms where they're supposed to be taking classes almost like they're in high school, where classes are. I mean, all of them have classes. And I say all of them, I mean like out of 100 to 120 students on average per semester, about 90 students pretty much fall under this sort of category out of 3/4 of them, where they would have a class at 8 o'clock, then a class at 9:25, then a class at 10:50, or they'll have a class at 9:25, then one at 10:50, then one at 12:15, or they'll have a class at 10:50 and then 12:15 and then 1:40, or from 12:15 and then 1:40 and then 3:05, and then some of them having another class after that at 4:30, and that's basically the gamut of how their day runs, because that's the way the university runs, as if that's on literally a high school schedule and sort of a banker's hours or regular work hours schedule. The idea of evening classes, the idea of weekend classes, the idea of doing non-COVID related hybrid and online classes that accommodate people's schedules in terms of work, in terms of doing other things that are actually far more serious than a sports club or intramural sports. Not there, at least not with the history department, and not with the departments I'm familiar with at Loyola. So, I mean, if you have that sort of mentality, that sort of sense that the university only really cares about you if you're doing theology or you're in the Sullivan School of Business, which is their big school of business there, or if you're doing one of the sciences like biopsychology or something along those lines, then guess what? If that's the case, you're going to treat school as if it's like high school, which means you're coming in sort of like a drone, like you're going to get the same stuff that you learned ninth through 12th grade, or maybe if you throw in middle school, fifth, sixth or seventh, or even eighth grade through high school, and then that's it. And so your professors are basically high school teachers, or worse, people like me, like the equivalent of a substitute teacher, because I'm probably only going to be there for a short time, that kind of thing. That's the way they approach their learning. So having taught so many students over the years, going into these classrooms, it only took me 3 classes to figure out that, wow, these students really act like they're still in high school. I'm talking about juniors and seniors asking me permission to go to the bathroom. Demanding that there be a final exam at the end of the semester instead of a final, multimedia project, right? That kind of stuff, right? Why can't I ask straightforward questions, and so on and so forth, right? And so, even though the accumulation of my 2 years at Loyola University of Maryland, or 2 years worth of having those kinds of ask 9 questions that basically reinforce the reality that these students are being treated as if they're sort of in a Catholic high school, right? Is the reality that even though all that extraneous detail I've learned about what their experiences are came over the course of 2 years, having taught prior to this somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 students over, just 100 courses on the nose by the time I started teaching there, I knew after a week, after 3 classes, this is not the way schools are supposed to be. Hence my comment, these students are brain dead. Not in the sense that they're literally brain dead or any other thing, but in the sense that they've been conditioned to not use their minds in a college setting. So that's literally what it means. And so for those of you who are still offended, I'm still sorry. And for those of you who get it, thank you. That's one thing. The other thing I want to talk about are my colleagues, right? Because in this second part, they do not come off particularly well, right? I'm not trying to argue that there was some grand conspiracy that everybody in the department was out to get me or anything like that. That is not what I'm saying. But key members of the department who hired me essentially colluded to basically hire me as a filler, as some sort of cannon fodder, a token black person, until they got the black person they wanted to be their real token, to be the African American historian there. Right? I have nothing against the person they've hired. I'm vaguely aware of her credentials and her relative youth compared to mine, and so on and so forth. She's just as fine to hire. I don't care. The larger scheme of things, I don't care. What I am talking about, though, is a dying department. And what dying departments do in order to preserve themselves, in order to make themselves seem more on the ball in terms of being a fledgling department of history in this particular case, as opposed to something that's so seriously on the decline that if they lost any more professors, they would probably be folded up under a larger department that included English classics and psychology or sociology or something along those lines. Something like what University of District Columbia has, something like universities like University of Maryland University Campus, which is now University of Maryland Global Campus, actually has, and numerous other universities have done over the last, say, 20 or 25 years, which is fold these departments together. What's the point of having a history department if you've barely got enough people to actually teach courses? And the only reason that you have any sort of panache at all is you created something called Encountering the Past. History 100 course is basically meant to teach students what historians do for a living, in so many words, like the theoretical side of what historians actually do. The problem with that sort of thinking and that sort of assessment comes down to this. If you already have students who believe that they're in sort of version of high school, and then you hit them with a course that they have to take their first year, that their first year students in particular have to take, who are already coming in with a high school mentality because that's where they're coming out of, and now they're being treated like they're still in high school, and they're being forced to take a course about a subject they do not give a shit about. And then you're supposed to teach them the theories and nuts and bolts of what historians do in a profession that's in decline, and in a department that's already dying in some respects. Not only does that insult me as a prof and tells me that you don't think very much of me, right? You never thought very much of me when you hired me. It also tells me you don't think very much of yourself either. You're anything that you say around GPAs and who should get what Phi Beta Kappa award this and who should do senior seminar that. All that proves is that you have delusions of grandeur. Simple as that. And my writing about all this is partly righteous indignation. I'm kind of like, what the fuck? Why'd you hire me like this if all you plan on doing is getting rid of me in a year or two, right? If you didn't really want me, you should have just said no, and I could have kept looking for another job. That's one thing. The other thing, quite frankly, is this insults you too, right? You are saying to the world by doing things like you're doing to your non-tenured teaching faculty like me, and by hiring people who probably would be better off teaching anywhere else, that none of us really matter. We're going to act like we're indispensable because of the quality of our traditional scholarly research, but in reality, no one gives a fuck because in 5 or 10 years, this department might not exist anyway. So it's not me questioning my colleagues per se, but their lack of support in general and the specifics of the people who actually brought me on board in terms of those specific people and the wrong that they've done not only to me, but essentially to their department, to themselves, says really a lot more about them than it does about me and my approaches to anything, right? I must admit, this last 2 years have worn me out. I'm not burned out. I could still teach. I just would never want to teach like this again. Not ever.